Good morning, how's it going? Today I fancied getting the oil pastels out to do some drawing, and I wanted to use this monster of a sketchbook to do it in. I got this sketchbook for free as part of a college course, which I was so pleased about at the time. By the state of the stickers, I think you can tell how old it is now though. I don't often get this book out because it doesn't really fit on the desks that easily, but today I wanted to put it to good use. So let's get started. I started with a sketch drawn with a purple Prismacolor Coal Erase pencil. I really like sketching with these because you can rub them out and the pigment doesn't feel as harsh as graphite. Drawing with pencil can sometimes feel too permanent for my liking, so these pencils are just perfect for me. This sketch is an accumulation of a few different pictures from Pinterest. I mostly used this one. It just caught my eye while I was scrolling and I thought it was interesting. I don't know if it's from something, but if I've accidentally fallen into some fandom without realising, please let me know. I also saved these as well for more of a reference for the vibe of the piece. Mainly I just like the colours or the general shape of things. The background will change some as we go along, so don't get too attached to the sketch at this point. I'm using these oil pastels today. As you can see, there's a good range of blues and purples which I really like in this set, and I'm going to be offsetting them with yellow and orange. I'm starting with the shadows under the chin and down the cheek, and then moving over to the opposite side of the face to put in some of the brightest highlights. I'm doing this to get a better idea of what I want to do and where I want the colours to go. All I knew before starting was that I wanted a strong yellow light source coming from one side. I'm building up the colours roughly without blending first, and once I have an area completely covered that I'm happy with, I move on to blending it all together. Before I blend, you can see the roughness of the pastels. A lot of white spots where the paper hasn't been completely covered. When I'm blending it all together, these spots are what I'm trying to eliminate. I'm blending with a cotton bud here. You can also just use your fingers too, but I usually do that for bigger sections that don't have as much detail. The blending can be really satisfying. It makes the piece feel so much more finished in such a short amount of time. Once I speed it up, you can really see how quick the change is. After I've blended, I go back into spots that need touching up, and then I start on the post-it note and the glasses. I was a bit scared of getting to this point as it's the most detailed part around the eyes, where the viewer is most likely to focus on. The smudge mark over the eye will be covered up later, so we don't need to worry about that just now. I move on to the hair with a little less apprehension after a break. I start with the colours that I'm sure about, like the highlight yellow and the dark blues. The hair is just a process of building it up with lines, trying to follow where I think the light would be hitting it. I'm mostly making this up, so it's more of a puzzle than anything. I used the references for the sketch, but then I didn't look at them again, which in hindsight was probably a bit stupid, but here we are. Moving on to the neck, I started with the shadows as, again, I know for certain where they will be as they were in the sketch, and then I guess from there. This piece was just supposed to be for fun and for practice, and I didn't really intend to post it anywhere. What I'm trying to say is that this is not a how-to video, it's more of a fun experiment as I don't really know what I'm doing, I'm just enjoying doing it. I decided the hair needed more blue over in the yellow section as it was feeling a bit disconnected. It all went a bit green though, which I really should have expected. I try and blend it in a bit with another cotton bud, which I do think helps make it look a bit better. After I'd added more blue into the hair, I decided that that was what I was going to use in the jacket too. Up to this point I'd been ignoring having to make the choice, so it was nice to be shown that option. I'm also using a deep turquoisey colour in the shadows here, which I think works quite well to separate the skin from the clothes. I take the blue higher up the side of the collar, blending it into the yellow as best I can. Getting that to go smoothly was quite difficult as the colours are so different. It would have been easy to make the colours go muddy here, but the trick was to just blend them as little as possible. I wanted to make the bottom half a little darker as though the light can't reach that far. Again, trying to blend the blue into the yellow as delicately as possible. I go back and forth between blending and adding more pastels throughout so I can get a clean coverage. I then realised that I hadn't added the tape around the edges to keep them sharp, so I add that next. I'm using washi tape for this. This one came in a pack and I don't really like it, so I'm not fussed about using it for this. I tape around the edges, making sure that it's straight on the lines and pressed down properly so the oils can't bleed under it. Moving back to the jacket, I start by going over what is supposed to be like a lanyard badge holder thing around his neck. I'm not sure how much you get that impression as it's cut off, but it doesn't really matter. I add the darks along the bottom and work up to a bright blue highlight where I think the light would be hitting it. Enough to brighten the colour, but not enough to tinge it yellow. At least that's the idea. The other shoulder is much darker, using most of my darkest blues and blending out into a slightly lighter blue highlight for the highest point. The one thing I knew for sure was that I wanted a dark background with blown out lights, like you see in those paintings of out of focus cityscapes. I'll put a picture so you know what I mean. I've seen a lot of these on TikTok recently for some reason, so I've been toying with that idea in the back of my head. For these larger areas, I'm using my finger to try and get the oils as smooth as possible. It's also much quicker to blend these areas with your finger too. I don't want many defined shapes in the background apart from the lights. So, talking about the lights, here I am finally starting them. I didn't work on this for a day or so because I got in my head about ruining it with the background. I always seem to feel like this at some point with everything I make, and the only way to really stop it is to just try something. And it's not really that deep either. Like usually once I start I'm fine, but I've got to convince myself that it's literally just a bit of paper and nothing bad's gonna happen if I make something that's not to my own standards. It's silly, but I think most people who make things, whether it be drawing, painting, writing, or anything creative really, do feel like this at some point and understand it. Like I was saying, I'm just going for some nondescript shapes with a few blown out lights dotted around. I'm sticking to blues and purples for the background. I thought for a while about what colours I was going to use and didn't really come to any good conclusion, but I just started anyway because that's what I needed to do. I could have thought myself in circles, but it's better, for me at least, to just start and work it out as I go. I'm using the darkest shades of blue and purple that I have for this because I wanted to be able to blend them out into the black seamlessly. You'll see that I'm using my finger to blend a lot more here because of the bigger shapes. I was paying closer attention to the edges around the figure as these are the points where the darkest and the lightest shades come into contact. I'm trying to be especially careful as this is where you're most likely to muddy the colours by blending too much. I try to get as good a coverage as possible before blending the edges to make sure that when I'm blending, there is enough pigment on the paper already to move around. If the paper is too dry, the colours won't blend and you could leave scratches or uneven spots on the paper. Immediately after adding the black eye, I regretted it. It was supposed to look like a hand-drawn eye on the post-it note, but it just looked too dark and like it was sitting on top instead of on the paper. Instead of panicking, I moved on to the other eye in the meantime, while my brain worked in the background to try and come up with a solution. Deciding on what colours to use was a bit more of a struggle than I anticipated, but eventually I convinced myself to stop caring so much and just do it. I think that eye is quite good if I do say so myself. I like the reflection effect I managed to get. I added smudges and fingerprints, and I think that all in all it is a little better than it was. Now all that's left to do is enjoy the tape peel and see the final result. Overall, I like this piece. I enjoyed it for the most part and I managed to finish it pretty quickly for me. I'm still not completely happy with the post-it note eye, but apart from that, I am happy with all the decisions that I made. I really like oil pastels, but they were something I picked up completely on my own and anything I do know about them I learned from videos on here and other stuff online. So if I happen to be doing something wrong with them, please let me know. I won't be offended. Thank you for watching. If you've made it this far, please consider giving the video a like or a subscribe. I always read the comments, so if you do have any suggestions or questions, please feel free to ask. Thank you for being here, and I hope you have a nice day.